Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Rousey special update. The behind-the-scenes, the curtain view on the mechanics and the way that this entire thing works.
The board game part of the board game.
Oh, boy. This is, I was gonna make some pun like, welcome to the boardroom meeting, but I think that is actually disgusting, yeah.
I also realized I fucked up mine. I should have said the game part of the role-playing game, because this isn't a board game, but, I mean... Whatever, it's fine.
Are you saying this won't end with a Rube Goldberg machine throwing show into a contraption to catch cheese?
It's all going to end on a clue board. It's going to end on a clue board. I'm excited.
I wouldn't put it past you to actually do something like that and tease it in something like this. We're here to talk to you today about how the game actually works and like what's going on behind the scenes, because for people who are watching it just on the Twitch, just on the YouTube, you're probably seeing the game with all of the roles removed, and you probably, you might get a sense for when and where the roles are, but you might not know exactly what's happening behind them. And if you're watching them on the Patreon, on the other hand, you know exactly what's going on, and that might be just as confusing in its own way.
Yeah, essentially. So, we use the Windrose System for Rousey, which means that it's D20, but from there, things get kind of confusing or different. Not too confusing. I think you can actually explain it pretty succinctly.
Yeah, so basically the big deal with Windrose is you have your D20, and then you've got 3 attributes for your character, and those 3 attributes represent your wealth of skills, talents, etc. And whenever those attributes would be relevant to you performing an action to affect the world, you get to add an additional D6 to it. That's it. That's where the D6 comes in. And if you're ever looking for how much damage a move deals, because not everything deals damage, you also take the result of that D6. Now, additionally, there is an additional move called the roll to die, because I love puns, and the system rotates around do or die. DYE, of course. Whenever anything bad happens to you, you take your 3d6, those ones that correspond to each of your attributes, you roll them all together, and you get a result, and if you roll above a certain number, the bad thing doesn't happen, and if you roll below, the bad thing does happen. And, then you're allowed to keep one of those dice, and that becomes your swing, and that's when you see us taking on different colors in the world. That's us getting a different swing. And that is the most basic way that the gameplay works, And, there's also these nifty little things called gifts that modify your character, that add additional rules, that are specific to just you. These are things like your classes. These are things like your weapons, like certain memories and abilities that make your character beyond those 3 governing attributes. And, What I'm describing right now is the Windrose 0.5 rules. We are still not even close to a release. This is beta as heck, which is why I'm so glad that Christian's testing it out. I'm describing the 0.5 rules, but we haven't always played with those.
No, we haven't.
Rousey.
In fact, Rousey's been playing since I think about 0.3, right?
0.2.
Maybe 0.2, yeah. And it's been wild. It's actually been really good to kind of play with the rules and test them out, see how they work. It also means that Rousey has had a lot of history in terms of what its rules do. And there's almost every session there has been a rewrite of the character rules and otherwise to fit with a change in the system.
Fuck yeah, next session I ain't changing shit.
Yes. Yeah, so we're finally to the point where on the most recent, like months from now, that session is good. However, I did want to take the time to go in a bit behind and actually talk about what the classes do, because you might see the characters do some weird stuff, and you not really know exactly what's going on, so that would be something I wanted to go over. just give you a little behind the view there. I think in that way, maybe starting with Buru, since Buru's the one who's gone through, I think, the most changes of everyone.
Yeah, if do we want to do... So, I'm just a really quick primer on what Point 2 and Point 3 looked like, and what you'll be looking like when you look at Session 1 and Session 2, which use Point 2 and Point 3 respectively. Point 2 just involved everybody had a defense score. That's gone. Everybody had a ludicrously low defense score, everything always hit, but otherwise it was the same roll to do plus attribute system. The Point 3 had an experimental defense system that evolved into roll to die. It requires it has some weird defense components that have you taking auto hits sometimes, which nobody liked, we found out.
Yeah.
So that's what's up with those two, and Buru was the one who mostly took those auto hits. So he is a perfect place to start.
Absolutely. Now, the simplest aspect of Buru's character, that it stays the same through all of them, is the fact that he's a character that functions off of a special system that we made up for him called Momentum.
Yes.
It's very simple. Buru, if you can lock yourself into color in this, like as we talked about earlier with, if you roll a die, you get to keep a color, and you get to stick in that color, keep the dice you have. Now, Buru always operated under the assumption that, well, if you stay in a color forever, then, or at least for a while, every turn you're in that color or you use that color, you get a little extra bonus. You pick up speed, you get stronger, you get faster, you just keep going and going and going.
At the cost of versatility, you tunnel vision in on a specific aspect of your character, and you lose your ability to accurately respond to a wide variety of situations in exchange for this power and momentum.
Mm-hmm. And Buru's character had basically taken that and started using that system to great effect in the first session. And it took a little bit of maneuvering to try to both... Because I think the momentum system was very strong to start. And then there was also it trying to balance out with the different system updates. So Buru's... Eventually it kind of got... held back a little bit, where there's a momentum cap you can reach so that the numbers don't get Pathfinder. And beyond that, there was also a few changes with the way that momentum relates to other mechanics. Like there's a special attack system in Windrose, for example, which lets you do things that are beyond just I swing and I hit, at the cost sometimes, or maybe even using it to succeed on hitting an attack you would have not succeeded on for just the cost of a little money. Or not a little money, a little health money. Now, Buru gets the ability to use those special attacks without having to incur that extra health penalty when granted to him. So that was something that kind of existed for a while there for Buru as well, and it makes him pretty powerful so long as he just sticks in there.
Yes, he's sort of like that juggernaut, which was... I think that was the design goal behind the character, and I think you did a really good job effectively communicating that. Because, every character is really, really intentionally designed in 13th God, which has been really impressive. They all have this primary gift that they can't remove, actually. This is a special thing for 13th God.
Yes.
You have... Basically, since it's a shorter campaign, there's less freedom in terms of what you can equip in terms of gifts and, what defines your primary class, etc. But the exchange is, every single primary gift has been so carefully tailored to the character, you wouldn't want to unequip them anyway.
Yeah.
you from the very start, this is the logical choice. So it's not like that is a rule that even needs to be enforced.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to get into that one a bit more too once we get to Show, because Show is kind of an exception to that rule.
Yes.
But finishing off on Buru, he does have some other stuff, because while he has his main special, basically his sword style, which is never removed and always sticks on, essentially like his hard-capped class if you're playing like MMO or something.
Yeah,
He also has these other side abilities, which he started with a full kit, 6 gifts all the way down, Now, these other 5, however, besides his main one that he can't take off, are removable, but they are also kind of tailored to who he is and his past as a person. All the characters in 13th God, for the most part, are designed with the idea of that, well, these are already people that have kind of accomplished things and are already pretty tough, so they already have some gifts that give them bonuses. They're like buffed up level 1s, if you could think about it that way. And what Buru kind of has is Buru has a bonus to his health, for one, along with a few other nice little bonus defenses when he has his pulse, which pulse is the name of when you roll to die. That's what decides
that's
your
three
actual
attributes.
defense. Yeah, that's that all coming together to allows you to actually defend yourself. He gets an extra 1d6 when he's dealing with physical attacks. So he's really tanky, really juggernaut, just really going in there, very strong. But he also has a few other just really interesting small ones, like kind of going into his lore a bit. He's got one of them which lets him cook very well and make some supportive cooking items for his friends, usually one-time use, in between scenes kind of thing. And he also has one called Ledger Keeper, which we'll see a bit more later on into the game, but essentially he's pretty good with numbers too. His past has put him in a situation where he needed to take care of his own just his own monetary means, so Buru actually kind of has a bit of experience beyond just the fighting, and it's really fun to see that come up with very specific memories, since most of Buru's gimmick is kind of contained within a few small class gifts. So he has a lot of room for just kind of stacking up some fun little fluff stuff in there as well.
Yep, sure does. Like, Buru's kit's really stacked, and like it's pretty straightforward in terms of what he wants to accomplish. He's about pretty substantial successes, is what I'd say. Like,
I'd say that too.
Like, he throws himself wholeheartedly into any situation and tries to overwhelm it with sheer numbers. Not in terms of like a multiplicity of numbers, but just he has the largest totals of any character in the cast. Just his modifiers are big. That's what he do.
Yes.
Next, would it be interesting to describe a character that perhaps contrasts that?
Yes, perhaps so. Now,
there's
I think
two.
There's two, honestly. Honestly, maybe three for really getting argumentative. But how about we talk about Junya, actually?
Oh, hell yeah.
Because Junya, I think, is the opposite, but also very similar.
Junya's weird.
Junya's weird. I think Junya has one of my favorite designed kits amongst them.
Junya has the kit that I'd use, yeah.
Yeah. So Junya, whereas Buru has momentum, a system that gives him lots of strength to keep going, Junya has something entirely different that doesn't really even play in with numbers too much. See, Junya has something, his special is the perfect parasol. And what that is, that's basically, it lets him pull out any go-go gadget kind of weapon or ability, so long as it is somehow still a parasol and also built in with its other purpose. So we saw one thing, which is the Nagi Kasa, which is a spear umbrella parasol. Now technically that's a separate item in his kit, because that's one that he kind of keeps as a general all-rounder. That's one he comes back to. But there are other ones that he can pull out for very specific situations, and he makes them up on the spot as we continue in the game. And the fun thing about those is that they're just ridiculous, and I've kind of reflected that in a bit in the gameplay, because you see, every time Junya's main ability levels up, he gets an extra advantage to the first roll that he uses with those parasols after revealing it. And I mean that as in, it starts out, the first time he revealed one, he gets advantage. Then he gets triple advantage the next time, and then quadruple advantage, and it just keeps going like that forever.
Yeah.
At a certain point, it just becomes an automatic success and a higher crit range chance.
Yeah,
but
more or less.
Regardless, I think it kind of shows the way Junya is designed. He's a giant. His kit is designed to be as absurd as he is. Yeah. So a lot of the ways which he obtains these great heights is done through dumb things.
Let me roll out my 10 D20s.
Yep. And it's also,
shit.
I think it plays into the other theme of Junya's character, is it's about inviting disaster. It's daring something bad to happen, because, you get 5 times advantage, but you could still fail, and failing then would just be hilarious.
Yeah.
And basically, on top of the perfect parasol, he has a kit that kind of works really well with him as well for just that similar kind of gameplay feel of just, I'm throwing myself out there. I may get completely wrecked or I may be really cool.
Yeah.
Like, one of the favorites is he has one ability which allows him to essentially make a claim about the world. Anything that he thinks is related to beauty or otherwise, he can make a claim about it, and he rolls after he makes a claim. And if he succeeds, that's absolutely true. I changed the world state to affect what he said, and that is now fact of reality. On the other hand, if he fails, that is not the case at all. That is completely wrong. He's messed up, and he takes a damage to his pride.
He takes a huge amount of damage, it turns out.
Yeah. Now, over time, that's also upgraded to the point where it can allow people to correct him and do more damage to him, but they also know the correct information. Basically, it's an ability that allows Junior to be correct or changes the world to make him incorrect, which is a very fun ability to see practically. And there are a few examples down the line where that just becomes hilarious. I have changed lore to reflect this ability, even conceptually.
Good God.
Yeah. But yeah, Junior's entire kit kind of reflects around that idea of just, well, what can I do? Like, how can I be ridiculous? How can I flaunt myself? Like, he had some abilities that, that allow him to declare himself out there publicly, and people could either know him or they know him and hate him. He has ways to spend money to obtain any wealth item, like once or twice per session, depending on the level of the ability. It's pretty nice. Junior has a really good kit for just absurdity, and I think Aram uses it very, very well.
Yes. I adore his kit. He also has the money one.
Yeah, that's what I had mentioned. You can buy anything.
Yeah. It's like that was used to great fucking... Oh, God. Sorry. This is hard for me, because I keep wanting to go like, oh, man, remember that time that, like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That thing with the asserting anything is true.
Yeah,
I am biting my fingers off.
I can show the example of the money one that happened in gameplay was when Junya bought Tokujin's castle in the first session.
Oh, fuck, this is afterwards. We can say that.
Yes,
oh,
we
shit,
can say that
right.
one,
okay,
yes.
Cool. Fantastic.
Yeah. And he also used the ability to stall for time to give Hideo enough time to get to the archers when he talked to the captain, Hanmaru. He basically just stalled. The diplomacy died after he used it because he failed, but he did manage to kind of burn that point to just draw the attention to himself, which is something he's very good at doing. Although I didn't name it in the recording, I'll say one more example. One of the cases where Junya did the can I declare something narratively was when he wanted to ask, do I know Tokujin? And he rolled a crit fail. So instead of saying no you don't, I said yes you do, but you're his best friend. Kind of situation, because I could not think of anything worse than being friends with Tokujin at the time. But yeah, Junior got a pretty good use of his abilities in the first one. I love that
so fucking much.
But yeah, I'd say next up, we'll keep the trend on, where next up we'll talk about the person who's closest to Junior, perhaps. The final of the three who started out with a full kit would be Hideo. And
yes, indeed.
Hideo is a character I would probably play if I was playing in 13th God. With his kit and just the character in general, and I really like his. His is also an interesting one. It's a bit minimal, I'd say, but it has a lot of potential, and I feel like that's the big part of Hideo's, is that really his kit just allows you to do a lot roleplay wise. It adds a bit of like a link between the mechanics and roleplay, because essentially, minor spoilers, it may not be too obvious, but Hideo isn't actually a swordsman. He's a bit more secretive than that. Some would call him a ninja, maybe. Yeah, maybe. It's a bit hard to believe, and there's a bit more to it than just calling him a blanket ninja, but his abilities are certainly ninja-esque. For example, his clash ability, his primary sword style, is I call it Clash +1 because essentially it just lets them take +1 above whatever the other person did and automatically win a clash. And that's been an interesting one to work with as well, because initially it used a system called reads, which existed in previous ones, but no longer does now. Now, however, it more of just kind of locks you out of whatever attribute you're using when you do it. So, for example, if getting in a clashing demands that you and your opponent have the similar color. You're attacking them with red while they're locked into red, well, that's a clash. Now, for Hideo to use this ability, he would have to lock himself out of red until he goes without it, but in the same time, he'd be able to get a quick blow on someone. Now, that seems pretty powerful, however, it's kind of balanced out by the fact that Hideo doesn't have the biggest damage numbers compared to everyone else. Hideo's kind of got a balanced level of damage, and beyond that, his entire gimmick is really just not playing fair. So, the act of him ignoring a clash altogether was something I felt would be really nice to put into his kit, even if it did give me an initial concern on how I was going to balance it. He doesn't actually use it too much because there is that downside to it, but he doesn't really need to, because the thing about Hideo's kit is how much Austin gets just mileage out of all the other stuff.
Oh my god. Like, his kit reminds me the most of, like, a utility belt. There are just a lot of tools for different situations.
One of the most used tools Austin has, and you see this in the first session, is essentially what it does is it lets Austin take a minor NPC, like any of the background characters, anyone who doesn't have a name.
So much.
It just lets him take them, and that person was a plant from his family and is actually on his side. So, any NPC you can see, he turns him into an informant, and that informant can do a number of things. They can go and find information for him, they can distract an opponent, they can do anything that involves them not engaging in combat. And as Hideo level up, getting a combat familiar is actually going to be something he can do with that too. So it's going to be interesting to see that one evolve. But for now, he's used it to great effect. Like, in Session 1, when he was sneaking, he used it because, unfortunately, in Session 1, Hideo failed just about every stealth roll that he made. So, he used a bunch of abilities from the group all the way around to kind of distract everyone from that. So, what Hideo did is, at one point, he used it to make one of the retainers that was at Tokujin's palace actually a ninja plant that was there earlier. Someone who had been sent ahead to kind of scout out the area before Hideo and Junya had gotten there. Now, that allowed him to kind of bypass that roll once, and also that guy who was still around then unlocked the gates. And I think that's the best part of the ability, is that once it's used, unlike a static roll, that NPC now exists in the area and can continue to do things. Now, ideally this is balanced by, like, if you're on a time constraint, one guy's got to do something. They're not the best at it, but they're not the worst. They're competent. So if you need someone to do some research, they can do some research. But after that, if you have something else for them to do, you can do that. And as Hideo levels up, he gets more of these per session. So over time, there's a lot more just leeway that Austin has with these, and he really uses them to great success. Honestly, I think it's the most usability that he has, but even beyond that, he has a few other ones, like another one, which is close, called Rumor Mill, just allows him to essentially know information about an opponent before he fights them. It doesn't even have to be established on screen, it's just something that he got from a brief before he showed up. Similarly, he has some other abilities that allow him to kind of be defensive, but more of defensive in a disengaging kind of way. He's more of a side tank than anything. Buru's the one who can take hits, while Hideo cannot take hits, but he can't avoid them.
Yeah, he can negate them, which is sometimes even better if the hit is too big. Because, like, Buru requires, like, this is something you'll probably see later, I don't necessarily know, but big chunk and super attacks that maybe can't be overwhelmed through sheer numbers. Having somebody there to evade or negate shit is the better idea, while big chunk and numbers are better for the more rank and file.
Yes. So the big part of Hideo's kit that really lets him kind of get by in a lot of these is one, Smokescreen, which, as it sounds, lets him just kind of like poof out, just kind of back away from an attack, get an extra bonus. However, he does drop from an attribute that he was, whatever like color or attribute he was using last, he's locked out of. On the other hand, he also has something called Become Independent of Remorse, which lets him gain a bonus to any mental attacks. It's basically the mental, psychological version of Buru's defense, which really actually helped him in a session down the line, but generally just lets him avoid any kind of pleas for, like, sympathy from an enemy, or mercy, or anything like that, so he can be cold, which is really good, actually, because that could be a concern sometimes. In Windrose, you can take damage from attacks that are not physical, like if someone tries to play morale game on you, they can succeed, and Hideo's extra successful at avoiding that kind of stuff.
Yep, sure is.
It also lets him do extra damage if he's the one playing the morale game, which is a lot of fun, and I've seen it happen. Hideo is really good. Everyone's really good. Now, I've kind of been going over them. There are a few more abilities that the characters have picked up or dropped over time, but those are kind of the big ones you see and that I can really talk about. Over time, all the characters drop their initial 5 and pick up other ones and kind of get them more from there. But there is Sho, however, who is a bit different than the others. Sho starts out a bit more blank canvas. As Sho is now, Sho has a student class, which allows her to essentially kind of just pick up some stuff and slowly gain more just knowledge at time. It kind of reflects the fact that she's still learning some stuff, going through a bit of a crisis of faith for herself. Quite literally sometimes, since she has that book. Now, she does, however, have a pretty good sword style, and it's a very general one, too. It's not an incredibly specific, lock-in thing, like a momentum or anything like that, nor does it allow her to really avoid combat like Hideo, and it's not just purely insane like Junya's. It's a bit more, it's simple but effective. So, Sho has a specific Iaijutsu stance. Basically, it's her style. An Iaijutsu stance has been refined and reformed into an entire style itself, and it allows Sho to kind of wait, take a turn to build up, and lock into something called a rainbow dice. The rainbow dice, as its name implies, has all colors, and allows her to clash with anyone. Her dice is a 6 automatically, and just allows her to immediately, or not immediately, but to put that onto someone as soon as her next turn shows up, or next time she gets in a clash. Now, that is pretty simple. There are some limitations to it. For example, it's like a charged attack, so it takes a bit to get back up, and after using it, she could potentially start locked out of an attribute or otherwise if she uses it to its full capacity. It's something that she can pour all of her power into by gathering her attribute bonuses and all that stuff to get some extra bonuses to it, or she could just use it very lightly. It all depends on how much Jay's really willing to throw in at once into a singular attack. So it could be okay, I need to take out this target right now. I don't think there'll be too much trouble. I don't want to completely ruin myself, so I'm using a weaker. Or if it's like a boss, you might want to pull out the big strike. But
yeah, exactly. It's a very it's a style that takes an action to set up is the big thing, which is why it's oftentimes you'll still want to, if you can hit an enemy, just attacking twice is still more effective, because you'll deal 2 times the damage, and if you pull 2 6s, or a 6 and a 5, or a 6 and a 4, you'll still wind up dealing more damage, but if you need a single big hit for whatever reason, it is very useful.
Yes, it's the power of assurance, I'd say. You're gonna hit next turn, and you're gonna hit hard.
You're gonna win a clash, which could do something even cooler, like deprive the enemy of their own color. So it's good.
Especially with a lot of the bosses that are encountered after the first arc, knocking an enemy out of their color is actually a very useful thing. It can help.
Oh my god, yeah, holy shit.
Now, besides the class, though, being a student, which initially just started as a book, but then became a class as we kept kind of fixing the system up a bit, besides having the class of student and having the actual sword style, Sho had nothing starting out. She had the complete kind of open experience a normal Windrose character would get, and that's kind of intentional. I wanted to give Jay an opportunity to play a system as you would normally play it. So that also does some very interesting stuff for narrative and stuff like that too that I can't wait to look at. But ideally, it's kind of put her in a very almost every woman position, but it also means that she's the one who's going to take most from this journey. And that's kind of shown so far. With the first arc, for example, I put a little bit about it. I mentioned it in the actual recorded episode, too. Show picked up Hijizuru style from Sun Jeba at the end of the first arc. And that's actually come in handy a lot.
It's pretty good.
And it is pretty good. So, and although it's a kind of weaker version to start, that has potential to become Hijizuru style. And plus, Show also has the ability to... now that she's picked up some ones down the line, she can kind of remove her sword style and replace it with another one down the line if she really wanted to. Her kit's not too built around it. However, her sword style is still very good. There's less reason to stick with what she's got starting out, but at the same time, she also could, and she could just develop the side kit that she really likes. So it's interesting to see because her character, it's just going to be a lot of growth. A lot of stuff to kind of pick up from other characters. The prime Windrose experience.
Yeah, and it already. Yeah, I can't.
Yeah,
it's
unfortunately,
been good. Yeah,
it also means since we're about 5 sessions in already, and a lot's been picked up. But Hijizuru style's the only one I can talk about. So
yep,
yeah,
it's been useful.
Yeah, but yeah, that's essentially what's happening in the background mechanically. Again, a lot of that's cut out, besides a few small instances, just for brevity and for making sure the edited videos are nice and good. But I'm not trying to hide any of it. I do have the recorded sessions still. I do have them on the Patreon page for 13th God, which is my own. All of the sessions will go up every time that an arc concludes. So at the end of Arm 1 will go up. Now, however, that's for all tiers, but if you actually joined up and picked the $5 tier, you can see that session early. That session will actually drop at the first episode of the edited premiere of like that arc. So if you were really, really curious of seeing like what the mechanics look like and seeing that, you could join up for the basic tier. And if you're just really impatient like I would be, you could go in and check out the session early and watch the full thing. But don't spoil anything or I will find you.
Yeah, Christian will find you.
I don't have a sword style, but I have a hammer style. It's called the Banhammer, and I'm ruthless with it.
Yeah, so go check out the Patreon, and like hopefully we'll probably do another one of these videos later down the line when we can talk about more, because this was hard. This was really hard.
Yeah,
not to immediately spoil things.
I imagine the next one would most likely maybe be like a retrospective, or who knows? Who knows when the next one would be? Yeah.
A mid game halftime.
Yeah,
the halftime report.
Halftime report. But yeah, please. I hope you all keep enjoying, and please support the Patreon if you can. Chibi and I worked really hard on it, and while the show's running, I split all the money with Chibi equally, so we can all both get kind of just a little something for what we've been doing. And I'm excited to release regardless for everyone, however. The show's been, honestly, the reception's been great so far, and I'm recording before I've seen how the final reception to Arm 1 is. I'm sure that'll be great, though, just from seeing so far, and I'm honestly excited. It's been great.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's... I'm excited to see how people react to Jaba.
Yeah, I am too. That'll be good. Oh, gosh. Well, thank you everyone for stopping by and checking this out, checking out this little meta video. I hope it's enlightened people just a little bit on what the heck is actually going on.
Yes, and once again, support Christian on his Patreon. He does good work and put a lot of work into this project. Seriously, go help him out. He can't say it because he's, like, being humble and nice. No, go fucking support him. Thank
you. Thank you.
Okay, later.
Bye.